All right, and welcome to the Planet X podcast. I'm Chris,
Mike.
and with us again, we've got Jay Taylor from On the Square Comics.
Hello.
And
Hello, Jay.
we brought Jay on specifically to talk Deadpool.
Let's go.
We said we were going to do it last week, and we did it. I didn't even have to ask. I didn't even have to ask him.
I'll be right back.
Yeah, I didn't even have to ask. He was like, did you talk Deadpool? I'm like, no. He's like, all right, cool. I want to come on and talk Deadpool. So that's what we're going to do. We're going to talk Deadpool.
Yeah, man. I am unabashed fan.
Yeah, it was probably one of the most fun movies I've seen in a really long time.
Yeah, I walked out of the theater, and I have a couple of friends who are contacts in the industry, and I saw the 7 o'clock on Thursday, and they were seeing a 9:50 or something like that, and at one point I was going to do a double header with them, so they sent it to me, and hey, what'd you think? And I sent it back to them, and I said, I don't know what they could have done to make it a better movie experience of that character. Like, it's a perfect Deadpool movie. Now, that doesn't mean it's the greatest superhero movie of all time, though I would put it in contention. But I don't think it could have been I don't think there's anything I could think of that they could have added that would have made it a better Deadpool movie.
I think, we talked about this when the second Captain America movie came out,
right?
That you started to see the maturation of the comic book film, that it wasn't just guy in tights fighting evil guy in tights to save the city, to save the world, to save the girl, to save whatever. That movie was a spy movie that happened to have superheroes in it.
Yeah. And
with the Daredevil television show on Netflix, you saw like a film noir that happened to be about superheroes. And Jessica Jones was a psychological thriller that happened to be about superheroes.
Yeah.
Here you got your dick joke comedy that happened to be about superheroes.
Absolutely.
Yeah, your action comedy about superheroes.
Yeah.
And I can say that I laughed at this movie. I laughed from the opening credits until the through the post credits scene. I mean, there was not a point where I really wasn't.
Well, I
wasn't laughing.
We were saying before about, in pre-show we were talking about following the source material.
Yeah.
Or did we just say that at the beginning of the show? Our conversation's blending into one.
Right.
But anyway, following the source material,
sauce, man.
Which has been which has kind of been what we've been saying about any of the comic book movies, or any book even. Like, look at how much everybody hated World War Z, the film, because it was nothing like World War Z, the book.
The book. Right. Yeah, it was absolutely nothing like the book.
And they gave us the Deadpool movie, and this kind of had the advantage of they gave us a shitty Deadpool once,
right,
for a few minutes. So they gave us what could possibly be an interesting Deadpool in the opening scenes of that Wolverine movie, in the opening part of
right,
where you're like, oh wow, and then they're like, oh, they sucked all the cool out of this, and they made it this stinks now.
When I was trying to explain to people who would say to me, who aren't necessarily huge comic book fans, who would say to me, well, does a character appear in a prior movie? And I would say to him, this is a character whose tagline is the merc with the mouth. And when he finally appears in that movie, his mouth has been sewn shut. Now, I understand it was a plot point of that movie, but you don't. It's like
that was
webs away from Spider-Man or something. It's too central to what he does.
Yeah, it's what makes that character that character.
Right.
Yeah, because
otherwise he's just the Punisher.
Yeah, well, he's literally a ripoff of an existing character. He's Deathstroke in Spider-Man's costume, but they, all that things that it was like you took everything kind of cliche about 90s comic book characters and developed the actual character into, you made the character interesting from a physical aspect of the character that was kind of being done a lot at that point.
Yeah.
Maybe he was done a little first, and then really, because he was done pre-Image, and then once you got into Image, everybody looked like Cable and Deadpool.
I will say, as a artist, as a comic artist, and certainly there is a divide out there among people who talk about Deadpool because he is very fungible, right? He can morph into different things depending on what tone you want to take with your story. You can go completely ridiculous and say, you're going to do Deadpool, with oh God, I can't remember the historical figure who he's in, like the classics illustrated Deadpool version, or you can go something that hugs a little tighter to, his origins as, the Paper Chase. I'm talking about the Deadpool comic from like the mid '90s before, a lot of the super fourth wall breaking stuff kind of came into being. But as an artist, I think that one of the most he is incredibly fun to draw. And Rob Liefeld, who created Deadpool, along with Fabian Nicieza, let's make sure we say that, he was really onto something. He speaks in a number of interviews about how the creation of Deadpool's look came about, and it really was a response to what Todd McFarlane was doing with Spider-Man at the time. Todd McFarlane spoke to Rob and said, you're drawing these guys, and they have crazy faces, and they have all these pouches and everything. He's like, I draw Spider-Man. Boom, I draw an oval. I draw 2 other ovals. I'm done. I've got a page there. And Rob was saying, yeah, what the heck am I doing? Why don't I put somebody on with a face mask that covers their features, and then I'll be that much faster and able to produce my work. And so from that template of Spider-Man's costume, he came up with something. And I will strongly say that one of the biggest, most attractive things about Deadpool is the costuming. He really hit upon something, and I don't think it's based on Spider-Man's costume, but it's not totally ripped off. I think there's enough unique there. Yeah. There's enough unique there that makes it kind of cool, and he's a lot of fun to draw, and you just see so many cosplayers in that costume, and that's I had another conversation with somebody. I talked about this. It may be the most true to the comics costume that we've ever seen in a superhero movie.
Yeah, I'll agree with that.
That is the costume that he created, in New Mutants '98. I mean, aside from flipped over boots and maybe some small little things about how detailed up the chest, the chest thing is. That's that costume. So that look is iconic. And then, of course, Daniel Way, who I think is really the one who, really kind of pushed that. Fabian had some aspects of the personality, but, that was really where the personality part came from. Which, in the movie, how perfectly was it addressed?
It was spot on, and a good part of that is because Ryan Reynolds is such a fan of the character.
Yes.
He wanted to do the character justice, and he did. I mean, that character on that screen was not Ryan Reynolds in a mask. It was Deadpool.
Yeah. It was it was believable. You weren't like, oh, here's just Ryan Reynolds playing a character, or you forgot it was that actor.
Mm-hmm.
Right.
And even to the point, they keep referencing Ryan Reynolds, the actor, throughout the movie.
Yeah.
And you disassociated the guy from himself. You know, the guy as he's talking about himself.
Right. And,
You know, I was looking on the Flickster app when I was looking for times when I went to go see the movie over the weekend, and I just kind of flipped down to the critic reviews, and they because they have the Rotten Tomato ratings, and Deadpool has got an 83% on Rotten Tomatoes, and they have 3 of the critics' reviews up, and they have one of the negative ones. And it's from a guy named Anthony Lane, who writes for The New Yorker. Now,
Okay.
if there was a guy who was not going to get it, it's probably
It's
the critic.
a guy that's writing for the New Yorker. Yeah.
but I mean, listen to this. I mean, this is just a snippet from his review. Watching the film is like sitting at dinner with a teenager who believes that if he swears long and loudly enough, he will shock the grown-ups into accepting him as one of their own. That might be the most perfect description of the character of Deadpool I've ever read. It's to call this a negative review.
Yeah, he basically said they got it right. I don't like what they did. I don't like this character. They got it right.
I just picture a guy with like a curled up mustache and a monocle and a bow tie and a very high collar, sitting in the movie theater, yes, sipping a tea or a brandy and just spitting it at the screen.
Oh man!
Yeah, I could.
Mouth agape.
I can't believe what they're doing. I'll say, somebody hit upon it, and you saw the trailers. You knew that you kind of had a good feeling about the movie going in. How great were the opening credits?
The opening credits were so good, and that's what I mean. Like I was laughing my ass off during the credit. The opening credits.
I couldn't think of a movie that's ever done that. Can you think of a movie where I've ever seen that, where they basically took the entire opening credits and didn't name a person?
Yeah.
Like, that's unheard of, because people know that generally, I mean, now Marvel's changed this, most people aren't sticking around for closing credits, so that's your chance for stars to get their names in. And this movie, and the director and the producers and all that stuff, this movie basically said, nah, you know what, we're going to take this opportunity to really punch some nice barbs at how these things are constructed. One CGI character, one morose teenager, an overpaid loser or whatever the verbiage they used for the director. The real stars of this, the writers. You know what I mean? Like, just perfect, like a CGI character. Or, you know what I mean? Like, it was good.
It at the same time as being a good comic book movie, it goofed on comic book movies.
Yes.
In the same way, but not in a we love this, but here's the stupid parts of it.
Right.
And actually, in the way they told the story, I think to kind of have the flashback origin story, I think did a lot for the pacing of it. Because if you had done it chronologically and trying to let it fall out, it wouldn't have worked as well. You got into, you got into the action and you got him in the costume literally in the first frames of the film.
Yeah, and that's what I was worried about going in. Like, I was going like, okay, I know we've got to have some backstory here, and we have to have some build up to, what happened and how he became who he is. And I'm like, I don't really know if I want to sit through a half hour, 45 minutes of, Ryan Reynolds getting to the point where he's in the costume. And that didn't happen. It was, right away he was,
Yeah, and they're going a good couple minutes, and I'm like, they didn't do any of the origin stuff. I'm like, I know I saw it in a commercial. And I was also thinking about it there. The whole risk of this movie to be like, all right, we're going to make a R-rated comic book movie that's going to be really dirty. We're going to take a super good-looking guy and put a mask over his face for most of the movie, and then for half the time that he has the mask off, his face is going to be all burnt up.
Right.
Yeah.
They took a lot of risks. They did some great things. I think you're right about jump into the story structure, get him in the thing. It's interesting. The trailers showed you very, very little that you don't like. They took most of the trailers from the first 10 minutes of the film.
Yeah.
From the set piece on the highway, right?
Yeah.
And a little bit in the taxi. So when you're going into when you're going into any of these movies, right? You're kind of been prepped by the trailers, and you're sort of waiting for when those moments are going to fall in, and you're like, okay, so what key moment am I going to have missed an hour into it? Have I already have gone to seen, or I already have seen this part, so it's not going to be as meaningful? And they took it almost all from the first 10 minutes. So once you got past that scene, you're like, wow, I've got a whole nother hour and whatever's left to see all new stuff.
Yeah.
And you're at that, I don't know what's going to happen. You know, like the one I always bring up is that first Avengers movie. In the trailer, they show that scene where the Hulk saves Iron Man, which is supposed to be the tense build-up rescue at the very end of the movie, but it was in all the trailers, and everybody was waiting for, you know, it was like, all right, this is going to happen. And the same thing when they did that second Andrew Garfield Spider-Man movie, they gave you this whole thing where they built up to him being, oh, I'm not going to be Spider-Man anymore. You know, I'll never be Spider-Man again. We're like, oh, I know you're going to be Spider-Man again because the big action scene they kept showing in the trailer hadn't fucking happened yet.
Right. Yeah.
You know, the trailer, they literally showed you the last frame of the film in the trailer.
Right.
And it might just be this time of year that this happens to me. Because I love trailers. I've always loved, you know, that was always one of my favorite parts of going to the movies, of like, oh, seeing the previews for other things. Yeah. And now that trailers are coming into my house on the internet, you know, that's even better. But sometimes I feel that a trailer, you know, I almost would rather see a movie without seeing the trailer, which is I've been power watching Oscar movies, which I've been talking about on the show for weeks now. And I'm going into these movies with knowing nothing about it and having zero expectation, and you know, just kind of on almost like somebody's recommendation of, here, this is good. So I'm like, all right, I'm going to check it out. And you're like, wow, I didn't know what this movie was about, and I'm hooked and I'm into it. And I think the Deadpool movie, I really want to keep saying Daredevil, but it's on the tip of my tongue. But the Deadpool movie did a good job, like you said, it didn't give anything away, that you didn't really know what was going to happen at the end of that movie. Yeah, even though you knew he was going to kill the guy. I mean, it was pretty, you know.
Yeah, you knew there was going to be a big fight on. You knew there was going to be a big fight on the highway, and you didn't know what that was about, and you didn't know why. You know, where do we go after that? Like, was that the final set piece, or was that?
The sequence on the highway was fantastic.
Oh yeah. Oh.
You know, which is a lot of which we had seen, you know, even going back to the test footage that, you know, somebody leaked, and it turns out that it was kind of Ryan Reynolds that leaked it.
Yeah.
But you know, and then, you know, you saw a little bit in the trailers and a little bit more in the trailers and all that. But even like when you get to the point where, you know, Colossus and Negasonic Teenage Warhead show up, and I was dying when Deadpool was punching Colossus and breaking his wrists.
Yes, great.
You know.
Now,
and it was just.
Go ahead.
You know, there were just like some jokes in there that just were just, even like in that scene, I was just dying because it was just so well written.
Now, Colossus is one of my favorite X-Men, and this is super nitpicky, and I know that there was I saw some people put on that the CGI for Colossus wasn't quite maybe up to Avengers level CGI or Guardians of the Galaxy level CGI, like if you think about Groot and Rocket and those characters, and I can see that criticism a little bit. The bigger thing, I guess, for me was that they really characterized him as like stereotypical Russian, like big dumb Russian guy. You know what I mean?
Yeah, that might have been one of my few complaints.
What's that?
That might have been one of my few complaints about the movie too. Was just the over dumb Russianing of Colossus, I guess.
Now he had a lot of heart, which I think was perfect for Colossus.
Yeah, that was one of the things I was explaining to my wife about the character of Colossus. I'm like, he's this big kind of indestructible man who's an artist.
Yeah.
He's a hard man with a soft heart. Is the
Right.
But I actually kind of didn't mind the being super Russian like that.
Yeah.
Because that's very early 80s, mid 80s Colossus.
Just the speech pattern being so like broken English. I don't feel like they always they didn't do that in the comics. Now, granted, it's easier to do that when you have somebody speaking the dialogue than when you have it just written there. It's kind of hard to read as sort of that kind of stilted speech pattern. I think that I think all things being equal, he looked good, and I think that the message that the character brought to the movie was kind of perfect.
Yeah. Oh, yeah, definitely.
And really was a great counterpoint to what was going on with the Deadpool character and the snark and all that, and then the Negasonic Teenage Warhead. Though I gotta admit, I'm not that familiar with that character. Here I am, the comic guy. I should know about her.
He's a minor character in X-Men history, I think.
Yeah, and they made her powers more like Cannonball than what I think her powers are in the comics, right?
Yeah, I only remember reading very little of her, and it was years ago. And she was I think she's more of a villain. She was associated with the Hellfire Club.
Yeah, I mean, she almost was taking the place of like Boom Boom or Cannonball in terms of the way they powered her up. That one of the great scenes too that they did in the movie was and they played this one in the trailer a little bit clipped because they just sort of left it to the idea that Colossus gets mangled by she has a name and I can't think of it.
Angel Dust.
Yeah, Angel Dust. But in reality, he's kind of going up to her like, yeah, I don't really want to fight a woman. Can't we? We can figure this out. And then she wails on him. And then they turn to the girl and she's like, updating
she's texting
her.
on the phone and she's got her finger up like, give me just a minute.
Just a second. One second.
and the delivery of no, go ahead, finish your tweet.
Yeah, right. Exactly. Yeah. You posting that to Instagram? Yeah, get on there. So good. Yeah. Yeah.
But there was some other fun stuff in there that was like not necessarily. It was like references to other Marvel movies without really being those Marvel movies because they were kind of the end battle kind of happened on a helicarrier.
Helicarrier, right?
And also when he's in the bar and he walks in and Liefeld is sitting there and he's like, Bob Liefeld, that's Hydra Bob. That's his sidekick, Hydra Bob.
Oh.
But
okay.
You can't call him Hydra Bob because Hydra's
right.
owned by Disney.
I missed when he walks in, and I went back and said this to one of my buddies, like, it's just one of those things where you can only catch so much at certain times. For whatever reason, when he actually walks past Liefeld, I wasn't like either super focused on where the camera was or whatever the case may be. And so I didn't see whether it was actually Rob in the cameo, though I knew he was expected to have a cameo somewhere. Yeah. And he goes, and he says effing Liefeld or whatever as he walks by him. And so like later on I was sending back stuff to my buddies saying, was that really Rob in that cameo right there? And I didn't even think about the Bob thing. But that was I'm just glad that was a cameo that they were able to to work in, because he's been a guy who is he's so here's my unabashed Rob love, but it really is true. That guy is so excited about comics, loves the medium, has never stopped. I shouldn't say has never stopped. He took a hiatus period. Has never stopped producing work. Is always gracious to fans and deals with a lot of shit from people on the internet and in the comics industry in general who, make no bones about wanting to take their pot shots at him for, whatever. I mean,
I've always said he became the poster boy for the problem of comics of style over substance.
Yeah.
And he just kind of became the guy, kind of like how Barry Bonds became the guy that hate for steroids in baseball, and I'm trying to think of other examples of the downfall, like how Warrant became the reason to blame like late '80s hard rock for getting goofy, because like Warrant wrote Cherry Pie. I think Rob Liefeld.
Well, see, that's a great analogy, but I'm going to extend it a little bit. I love that. The Warren thing, right? Here we can speak to this. I think Rob Liefeld, and maybe this may fall on deaf ears, I don't know. I feel like Rob Liefeld is the poison of that. And here's why.
Okay. I think I see where you're going with this.
Because Poison is actually a half-decent band. They have some good songs. Now, yes, Ricky Rocket looks like a chick on their first album cover. There's no question about it. Ozzy Osbourne was right. He thought it was a woman. He really does look like a girl there. And they made some mistakes with excesses. Yes. And they're the whipping boys, or one of the whipping boys of that band era. But they are still, in many respects, they have some very, very good songs. Some songs that, in my opinion, I'm not saying this ironically, I really like and I think hold up. And that's my feeling about Liefeld is the Captain America drawing that was the promo piece for when he took over Captain America, when the heroes were in their alternate dimension. It is a horrific drawing. There's no question about it. But you're talking about a guy who probably has had published conservatively 1 million drawings in his career. If you want to, well, maybe that's probably an exaggeration. But let's say 100,000 drawings if you consider each panel to be a drawing, right? Yeah. You're talking about 100 drawings per comic, just about 5 panels a page, 20 to 22 pages. The guy has hundreds and probably, I don't know how many exactly, issues out there in print. You're gonna miss. You're gonna have some that look fucked up. And him, maybe he has even some more. And there were times when he was rushed and pumping out work, and it looks really bad. But given time,
some of that was the time period too, where it was like everybody was, was just trying to get out as much, as much work as they could.
Well, they were making a mint, so why the hell not, right? If you were getting a couple grand every time you put the podcast out, you'd be potting
every day,
right?
Oh yeah.
Getting on, going. What are we gonna talk about? I don't know.
Sleep. But who needs sleep?
Yeah, right. Exactly. So yeah, but I like your analogy. I'm not a huge fan of Warren, but I am a fan of Poison. I think that's the analogy. Thoughts?
I maybe I'll agree with you a little bit more, because Warren let that albatross get hung on them, and it actually kind of literally killed them. It Janie Lane never You know,
Really?
he got in depression and died because of his issues,
Okay.
kind of over that stuff. I think the analogy with Poison might be better because Poison just kind of kept on trucking until they became a thing again.
Yeah, until they
You
came
know,
back.
and it was like, oh yeah, you know, and everybody's like, all right, we forget that they did all the hairspray and lacy clothes and all that shit, and you're like, I did kind of like these songs.
Yeah,
You know, Ain't Nothing But a Good Time is a really fucking catchy, fun song.
Absolutely.
Yeah. I'll tell you
And
what, I can play Every Rose Has Its Thorn on a guitar.
yeah,
There's a reason for that, right?
I think every fucking there was one point where every dude with an acoustic guitar learned how to play that song.
Yeah, right?
Because for that you know, there was a good solid 4 or 5 years where that was a panty peeler song. And if you were a teenage guy with a guitar,
Yeah, right? You were like,
you learned how to play Every Rose Has Its Fucking Thorn.
yeah, right? Like you got to get that sigh at the beginning.
Yeah. And then knock the.
Yeah. Yeah, right. How Rob Liefeld is just like Poison. Nice.
It's not a bad analogy. You know, there was a show that I watched that I loved to hate, a show called Revolution. It was like a post-apocalyptic zombie show, but without the zombies.
Power.
Yeah, when the power was off.
Right.
And they actually did a bit. They had like a New Vegas, where it was just this like tent city that they're walking around. And one of the gimmicks through the show was you would hear different rock and roll songs or different modern songs played on acoustic guitars or by mariachi bands, because there was no way to, like, you know, the only way you could hear a song was if people played it. So you heard these different interpretations of songs that you knew. So at one point, they're walking through this New Vegas, and I hear Every Rose Has Its Thorn.
Nice.
And the guy starts singing it, and I'm like, whoever they got sounds just like Bret Michaels. And the main characters kind of turn and look, and there's this little stage, and there's Bret Michaels playing. And one of the main characters looks at the other ones and goes, Bret Michaels. He goes, he's like a goddamn cockroach. or something like that. Like, the only things that are going to survive the apocalypse are cockroaches and Bret Michaels.
Nice. That's great.
That might be the case.
And especially, too, because that was after the point where he had the big comeback.
Right.
And then they're performing everywhere. They wound up performing at the Tonys somehow. Then he almost got killed by the stage when they hit him in the head with that big piece of scenery.
And he had the aneurysm. And all that.
And then he had an aneurysm and almost died and won a Celebrity Apprentice.
Yeah,
he just kept pulling shit out of his ass. So it was
didn't he have like a book of? Wasn't there like a Bret Michaels show where he's talking like he's?
He was dating. He was trying to like.
That was what kind of like prompted his comeback. Yeah.
The Bachelor with
Bret
Michaels, basically.
What was it called?
Rock of Love. That they had this big mansion, and they just filled it with these skanks, and it was like they were all trying to date Bret Michaels, so he's just banging bimbos, you know, and being on TV and getting back out there, and it was just like, and we watched this stupid thing all the time. I would go over to my buddy's house, and me and my buddy and his wife and a couple other people would be sitting there watching this stupid show. And I'm like, you know, he's getting himself back out there, and another generation of people are gonna hear his music, and it just kind of steamrolled into it that, all right, Poison went from playing like state fairs to now they're playing, you know, small arenas again.
Yep. Yeah. Well, God bless him, man. It's good that he got out there. And
I think in the same vein as like Rob Liefeld.
Yeah.
I don't mean to finish your Bret Michaels point. I'm sorry, I didn't mean to.
No, I think my Bret Michaels point was finished.
Okay, sorry. I didn't mean to step on it.
But
I think this is one of those moments with like Rob Liefeld that people are gonna kind of sit there and go, "Oh yeah, he did do some good work," you know. And he's still putting out, you know, he's still a quality artist. He's still a good guy. He's an artist and a writer.
Well, and here's the thing. I don't think anyone has ever, and I don't think he would, has ever conflated the idea that Rob Liefeld is some great prose writer.
He's not Frank Miller.
He's not going to be the guy who's going to come up with some great dialogue piece. What he is he is a guy who knows how to plot a comic book story, and he knows how to. He has a group of people who like the way he tells visuals. This is an argument I have all the time with people who come to me and tell me about what a terrible artist Rob Liefeld is, and I say, well, he's not drawing medical textbooks. These are not anatomically correct drawings, right? The people who you would say, oh, they're such great artists, they're not drawing anything that's any more realistic than Rob Liefeld is. They're just putting a surface of polish on it that you like better than Rob's, and that's your opinion. But if you go and you pull out a Rob Liefeld comic book, absent some of the stuff that happened in Image after he got like so busy, but if you pull out most of the comic books that he ever did, and then you try and just forget about the surface style, follow the storytelling, and what you're going to find is that the storytelling is rock solid. If Rob Liefeld gave you thumbnails of a comic and said, go draw it, you're going to know exactly, you're going to know from this panel, you go to this panel, you go to that panel, you finish there. And it's going to have the right story beats are going to fall at the right points on the pages, right? And you're going to have the big shots are going to have the right kind of focal points. You're going to have nice arrows and lines across the thing that draw your eye to stuff. He tells the proper story. Now, we can argue, some people go, oh, you know what, no, Mike Allred is my son's source. I love his artwork. Or I want Mike Mignola, where everything's a solid pool of black. Or, different artists, different tastes of different people. But at the end of the day, a comic book artist's job is to tell a story from panel to panel, and Rob Liefeld's comics, they do that.
Yeah.
So, we're on a Liefeld harangue.
One of the points I wanted to bring up with this movie doing well, and I guess they already announced that Wolverine 3 is going to be rated R.
Yep.
And I know that DC has been talking about a Lobo movie and batting the idea around, and I think this opens up that path that we'll get an R-rated Lobo movie. And I start to think about some movies that came out, like the Jonah Hex movie that stunk. If you had put the right person in charge of a Jonah Hex movie and it was an R-rated movie, I think you would have got a much better film. I think one of the things that hurt the Punisher movies was that it was, especially the Thomas Jane Punisher movie, I think not being an R-rated movie hurt it, and it took some of the literally the guts out of it.
Yeah, right. And it wasn't a bad movie by any real stretch of the imagination, but I think had it been R, I think we would have gotten definitely would have gotten a better movie.
Yeah, you would have just got a little bit more oomph out of it. I think the Disney Marvel stuff, the Netflix stuff is essentially R-rated stuff.
Oh yeah,
Daredevil and Jessica Jones, and I'm sure Luke Cage and the rest of the stuff is going to follow suit with that. I would like to see, if they decide to get into that area, and the first character that Disney Marvel owns that came to mind that I'd like to see in an R-rated movie is Howard the Duck.
Yeah.
I think if you're going to do anything kind of in that same vein as Deadpool, as kind of being meta and funny and adult, Howard the Duck is the way, because you'd have to make a successful Howard the Duck movie, you'd have to step so far away from that original Howard the Duck movie.
Yeah, right. Well, here's the interesting thing I think is that, and I don't know if it's been rated yet, but I haven't heard anything about it. But that Suicide Squad movie should be an R-rated movie. and I don't think it's going to be.
I think it's PG-13.
Yeah, I think it's gonna have to be for it to be the first, the next part of that DC cinematic universe.
Yep.
They're gonna go PG-13, which I think hurts it for the characters that they have in it. It's all murderers, and it's all
it's not. They're not good people.
Yeah, and they all lose their teeth, and then inevitably, once again, here's DC or here's Warner Brothers compared to Marvel and the Marvel properties. Inevitably, it's going to look toothless when compared to Deadpool.
But I think if you're going to do something with the Joker, with Harley Quinn, who's so popular, with the main
everybody in there,
you want to get the kid dollar, you want to get the family dollar, I guess, and put out a movie that everybody can go see. The thing I see on the DC horizon is Lobo to be an R-rated movie.
Yeah.
I'm sure there's probably a few other characters that they could do, and it would be interesting.
Trying to think.
You're not going to get like an R-rated Flash movie.
No, no, that's like that's pretty far removed from R-rated territory.
And you know what? The thing I was thinking about too was some of the previous. I know I saw a couple memes about The Crow, and that being maybe the first R-rated comic book movie.
Where was Blade?
I think the first Blade was an R-rated movie.
The first one was. I think by the time they got to the third one, they were down to PG.
Really? Because the third one I feel like is there's a rain of blood in that first one. That was pretty. When they go into the club and it's
the
like
shower of blood, yeah.
Showering of blood. I mean, I gotta feel like that had to be R-rated. I mean, Watchmen.
I think Watchmen was PG-13.
Blade was R in '98.
With the blue.
Crow was like '92.
Oh, so that would have been the first one, right?
Yeah, and actually, Blade 3. I guess all three Blade movies were R.
Okay.
Right. Now, what about Watchmen? Was PG?
Nah, there was
full frontal nudity. Full
all right. Yeah. All right.
And a big.
There was giant blue schlong in Watchmen.
Yeah, and a big sex scene.
Yeah.
Sure. All right. Then that has to be R.
Yeah, Watchmen was R, and that was 2009.
So maybe it was not even a Marvel movie because Blade was technically a Marvel movie too. Yeah. So.
The Crow was '94, and that was an R-rated movie.
Wow. So there's your first. Is that that would be the first, right?
I think so. The one that came to my mind as the first R-rated superhero movie I ever saw, but then I remembered it was not rated, was The Toxic Avenger.
Oh, Drama Studios.
And there are elements of the Deadpool movie that reminded me of that Toxic Avenger movie because the Toxic Avenger series did, break fourth wall type of stuff.
Only seen the first one. I've only seen the first.
You've only seen the first one?
Yeah.
The first one, the second one, and the fourth one are pretty quality. The third one isn't as great. And I actually, a friend of mine is actually in the fourth one. Somebody I went to high school with.
Nice.
Is actually in the fourth one. But and I think the original Toxic Avenger is like Marissa Tomei's first movie.
Oh, really?
She's like an extra in one of the crowd scenes.
Oh wow. Oh God.
But it was, watching Deadpool, I'm like this. It was that kind of fun silliness of Toxic Avenger. And Toxic Avenger was done as a send-up of Marvel movies. Or not of Marvel movies, of Marvel comics.
Okay.
That it kind of had that Incredible Hulk, Spider-Man, that hated hero type of story to it. And then they just, filled it in with tits and cursing and...
That's what I remember.
And dick jokes and
The sauna scene.
The sauna scene, yes.
Sauna scene.
One of my favorite scenes in that is when he dry cleans the old lady to death. And it was stuff like that where they were doing in Deadpool. I'm thinking about the Toxic Avenger dry cleaning the old lady. And they're like, he killed an innocent old lady. And they're like, oh no, it turns out she was a career criminal. That was like part of his superpower. He had like a spidey sense that let him know when somebody was evil.
Right.
And then he would kill them viciously.
Toxic Avenger, wow.
You know, I want to say Stan Lee was involved in one of the Toxic Avenger movies.
Really?
I almost feel that he narrated something for Troma with one of the films.
Those must have been pretty lean times for Stan getting a paycheck from Troma.
I think Stan Lee and Lloyd Kaufman were just like old friends from New York.
Oh, okay, that makes sense.
Like they had known each other for years and years, and maybe it wasn't one of the Toxic Avenger movies, but I'm almost positive Stan Lee was involved in something Troma.
Hmm.
And actually, as I'm flipping through the cast for Toxic Avenger 2, Michael Jai White, who played Spawn,
Wow.
his first movie is Toxic Avenger 2.
Hmm. Spawn. Oh, well, the Spawn movie.
Yeah, I was gonna say Spawn was rated.
That had to be rated R, right?
Yeah, I think you're right. I think it had to have been.
So, there's been other rated R superhero movies. Maybe not since the modern renaissance of the superhero movie, but...
Spawn was rated R in 97. But this is definitely... well, I guess, you know, you had a Marvel one with Blade. But this is the closest thing I'd say to, like, a mainstream character. You know, the fact that you had X-Men in it. You had an X-Men that appeared in the mainstream X-Men movies.
Yeah.
Granted, it was a different actor, but it was still...
Yeah, who in Colossus was Daniel Cudmore?
Yes.
What's the name of that guy? Really, they never really did anything with him in the X-Men movies. They never... I guess he's just so expensive, but he never really had any role in those movies.
Yeah, they didn't, you know, they could have expanded a little bit more, but I think they had spent so much on some of the other actors that, you know, because it almost felt like, okay, you cast some young actors in some of these parts, so you could be like, all right, we won't use Halle Berry, and we won't use Patrick Stewart as much, and we won't have as expensive a cast, but then they still never did that. Then they still had, you know, you just kind of had these characters in the background. And if you were a fan of Colossus, where there were some Colossus stories I loved, he was, you know, in that, like, for a long time, he was, like, top 5 X-Men for me.
Oh, yeah.
You know, you had, like, Wolverine, Nightcrawler, Colossus. I was a big Havoc guy.
Yeah, I liked Havoc. I was always a big Havoc guy.
Really? Neil Adams designed the Neil Adams designed Havoc. That's one of the more interesting costume designs that's out there. Very graphic.
Yes, yeah, very. That costume had a lot of dimension to it because he had those like things that came off his headpiece, and then he had the symbol in the middle that was kind of also like showed that his power was getting channeled through it.
Yep. No, there's some great from his early appearances in. Boy, dating me for real, I guess. But like the X-Men from like 62, 63 maybe of the Uncanny Run before it went to reprints, where he made his appearance and Neil Adams was the artist, and Sauron makes an appearance in those issues. I mean, if there's anybody who's listening and wants to go back and see just amazing artwork of a guy who was like, you know, at that point in time, like far and away, like the best artist working out there.
I used to have an X-Men T-shirt. I forget what issue it was because it had the issue number on it. You know, it was just a cover of an issue.
Yeah, it's him like this, right?
It wasn't that one. It was him and Cyclops, where Cyclops is shooting the I-beam and Havoc is shooting his plasma bolt, and they're kind of negating each other's power on the cover, and it's like brother versus brother, and you know, is this?
Yeah, I know the one you're talking about.
X-Men '98, I think, is the number.
I was gonna say I would have said 90 something. And I love that.
Either 97 or 98. Cover is by Dave Cockrum, and that's a classic from. Well, right after the Giant Size and kind of the reboot, and that was at the point in time where Havoc was still on the team, but they had just found Cyclops and brought him all back in. That's a great image. I was thinking of the one. The earlier one.
I know the exact one you're talking about, where he's kind of like that Starburst cover that they did with him.
Yep. Yeah. Havoc. Oh,
see, that's a X-Men character that if you're going to reboot a lot of these X-Men, because I didn't like the portrayal of Havoc that they used them very slightly in that X-Men First Class.
Yeah.
But I think the Havoc character had a lot of darker elements to it, because for more than half of his run, he was a villain. You know, through his career, he's been on both sides of the coin, and he's always been that character that had to like live up. You know, he's trying to live up to his brother's expectation.
Yeah.
Now let's talk about the post-credit announcement and the Ferris Bueller day off moment.
That was fantastic.
Speaking of people related to the Summers family tree.
The post credit scene with doing the Ferris Bueller, tribute at the end was brilliant. But they, for all intents and purposes, announced that we'll see Cable in the next movie.
Yes.
And he rattled off some names, and one of which was Keira Knightley.
Yeah, right.
And I actually saw somebody on the internet did like a fan mock-up of her as Cable.
Yep.
I kind of dug it. I'm like, that would be interesting.
Now, the shortly after the film came out, the guy who I might even have brought this up on one of these prior podcasts, or maybe not, I don't know, but Stephen Lang from Avatar is actively politicking for the role, and I'll tell you what, to me, I mean, I guess he's a little older, so he's sort of trending to like the long end of when you could play that role, but given he's a time traveler, I really don't you could easily make him be older, but he would be perfect.
Yeah.
He literally, to me, would be the perfect Cable. Then I saw some people put not Steve Nash. What's
Kevin Nash? I saw Kevin. Yeah. I saw that picture as well. Yeah.
I don't know enough about wrestling to know whether or not. I mean, obviously he looks the part. I don't know.
Kevin Nash has superhero comic book movie experience twice, actually.
Twice.
He was the Russian in the Thomas Jane Punisher movie.
Right.
And he was Super Shredder in Teenage Mutant Ninja Turtles 2.
Uh-huh. Okay. Did not know that. How is he as an actor?
Yeah.
He's a wrestler.
He's a wrestler.
He's a wrestler. As an actor, he's a wrestler.
He's a wrestler,
and you know what? In the world of wrestling, he's not even considered a wrestler that can act, that like sells things well. You know that portrays things well. He's good at being Kevin Nash,
right.
Which isn't quite what you want for Cable, but I mean, if he's really just going to be a man of few words,
right?
You know, because you really, it's going to be straight man to Deadpool for the whole thing. So you really just need a guy to be in there and be like, yeah, you know, just kind of grunt things at him. I mean, you put Bruce Willis in a white wig and I could see that working.
Yeah. Well, the somebody put John Hamm.
John Hamm from Mad Men?
Yes.
That's interesting.
Now I don't know. I never watched Mad Men, so I don't know enough. I know the concept of what it is, but I've never seen the show enough to know what his demeanor is or why people would be so into the. But I mean, a lot of people were like, "Oh yeah, he's a great choice." So I don't know what about the character in the Mad Men show makes people think, "Oh yeah, it's just a natural thing."
Yeah, I think casting Cable is weird because the character has to be older,
Yeah.
but you want to keep, if you want to keep making these things, you don't want to cast somebody
Too old.
too old.
Can't
So
choose
you kind of
one.
have to get somebody and age them up a little bit.
Yep.
So you'd ideally want to look for somebody in their 30s or early 40s.
Yeah. Yeah, I mean the Stephen Lang guy. I mean I think he's in his mid to late 60s.
Yeah, and I like that guy a lot. I mean, he was doing. There's another failed TV show that I was watching about. I don't even remember.
Dinosaur one.
The dinosaur one. Yes.
Yeah.
It was like Jurassic Park meets
What the heck was the name of that show? That was good. I liked the first couple episodes of that.
Yeah, I watched the whole season, and they were setting it up for like a cool reveal. It was like Jurassic Park and Lost, kind of combined. And it was I enjoyed the show, and then, they just it looked expensive as shit to make. I mean,
it probably was.
Episode, yeah. They had to clone all those dinosaurs. I mean, that must have cost a mint.
Wasn't it like Paleolithic or something, or...
No, it wasn't even anything that clever. It was...
Yeah. Oh man, I remember watching the first couple episodes.
I see it in my head, but I can't remember the name of it. God damn it!
Hold on, I'll get it in a second.
This is what happens when you don't do research.
Yeah.
Well, how we're gonna research something we didn't even? I guess if we got into like Stephen Lang, we would have been like.
I brought him up. I should have had his resume on tap on IMDb.
Terra Nova.
Terra Nova, that's it.
Terra Nova, right?
Terra Nova. That was 2000. Shit, that was already 5 years ago. That series.
Wow.
That ran what? A season?
A season. And they were setting it up for like time traveling Nazis or something like that.
Ooh.
Cool. All right.
There's going to be some big reveal in it that
there was an alternate crew, right? There was their settlement, and then there was like another settlement.
There was another settlement, but then they found like a third thing that it was like there was like a big box of secrets that they brought back in like the last episode that we were going to find out about later, and we never got that.
Oh, there you go.
Stephen Lang was in Tombstone, which just kind of cements Tombstone as being like the movie of badasses.
Yeah. There you go. Speaking of which, how about Kurt Russell?
Kurt Russell is Cable?
Yeah.
Perfect.
Too old. Too old probably now, but Kurt Russell's got to be in his 70s, right?
Kurt Russell started super young. Kurt Russell literally like started acting out of the womb. He's 64.
Oh, so he's actually probably as young. He's probably that age. He would be an awesome Cable. Did you ever see the movie Soldier?
Yes.
I love that stupid movie.
That movie was great, man.
I own Soldier. That's that was one of those things like when it became available, like a previously viewed version of Soldier. I'm like, I bought Soldier. And me and my brother watched it again.
Oh, we should do a viewing party of that.
Me and my brother will quote Soldier. It's like when he's all pissed off and the one guy looks at him and goes, "What are you gonna do now?" He goes, "I'm gonna kill them.
Kill
all of them."
All of them. And then they dumped. Is Jason Scott Lee?
Yes.
Is the other cyborg guy like the
other super soldier? Yes.
The T-9000 or whatever. Oh man, that was a good movie. Wow.
I always tell people they're like, "Oh, doesn't that movie suck?" I'm like, "No. If you just want to watch Kurt Russell kill people for 90 minutes, I'm like, it's the movie."
How about that too? About Deadpool, man, tight little movie. Running time? What was the running time on that thing? Maybe an hour and 35, 40 minutes.
Deadpool hour 48.
Okay.
Yeah, in this day and age, it's unheard of.
Yeah, like, that's a quick movie. We got out of that theater, and I'm like, wow, I still got, like I said, I was thinking about going to the doubleheader before I thought better of it. I'm like, I still have like an hour to figure out if I want to go see this other movie or not.
Yeah, I went to like a 3:00 showing, and I walked out and still had daylight. I was like, wow.
Yeah, I think that helped it. I think honestly because some of the superhero movies trending toward certainly Age of Ultron, like trending towards a little bit of a bloated kind of a runtime.
I think when you get a movie like that with so many characters in it, it has to be longer.
Yeah.
You have to touch on everybody. I think something like this where they banged it out, they got the origin out there, they told another story.
Yep.
So it gave, I guess it was all kind of connected into one big story.
Yeah.
I do have to say, out of everything that happened in that movie, the one thing I did not expect to ever see from a comic book movie by either Marvel or DC is to see a superhero getting fucked in the ass with a strap on.
Nope, didn't expect that at all.
Yeah, wasn't prepared for that.
No, but we should have been because the character is.
Yeah, right. Yeah.
I was like, okay.
Yeah, but it was funny. It was unexpected and funny.
Yeah, they did. I mean, they have funny sex scene stuff like that. To have it start off as like, a regular, and they just get into the ridiculousness of it.
Right.
It was fantastic.
Yeah, it starts out like a nice homage to 9.5 Weeks.
Yes.
Now, did anyone else think at the end that the female lead was going to, get into that, sort of pressure chamber that released latent mutant powers and turn into Domino?
No, I didn't think she was going to be Domino. She's Death.
She's Death.
She's Death, who's had a relationship with Deadpool.
Was it? I thought it was. Is that the? I thought it was Copycat was the character.
Well, there's Copycat. So the weird thing at the very outset of the New Mutants, when they first introduced Deadpool, Domino is involved, but then it turns out that she's Copycat.
Right.
And so she's the one who actually is having the relationship with Deadpool. So yeah, I guess it's that. But I thought they were setting that up to have her be, revealed to be something.
I thought that too. I thought at first when I first saw her, I thought she was going to be Domino.
Right.
But she's and I mean this is kind of nothing in the grand scheme of things. But another thing that I saw that kind of leads me to that way is one, that's kind of who he's got the relationship with in the comic book now, and she's also wearing like a skull ring at the end, which is
okay.
Kind of fits that a little bit.
Interesting.
Yeah, the character Vanessa Carlyle is Copycat. Yeah.
Yeah. So maybe that's where they're going with that in the next movie.
Yeah, I thought they were going to give her. I thought she was going to wind up getting powers by the end of it.
Right. Well, she's in the power. She's in that thing that's got the potential to turn her or give her powers. So I guess they could still do that now. They could always come back to that and say she had such an adrenaline rush as she's falling off the ship in that little sarcophagus, and it gave her the powers, and they just didn't bother to show it to us right at the end there. But it really does make for some interesting storytelling stuff with if Cable comes in the next one and is leading, an X-Force like team, and Deadpool is assigned to, kind of take him out like the original story, to have her somehow or other have already infiltrated the team if she is Copycat. So that'll be cool. I can't wait to see what that looks like. What's that actress's name? I couldn't remember anything I'd seen her in before.
She was in Firefly and Serenity.
Okay.
I don't know if you watched that. She was when they remade V. As she was the villain, the lead alien in V.
Oh, nice.
She's on Gotham right now.
Okay.
She's one of the main characters in Gotham. She's actually, and she's a character from the comic. She's Batman's doctor.
Leslie Tompkins?
Yes.
Oh, okay. I actively avoid Gotham.
Well, you know what? You might be better off for it.
I don't get Batman without. I don't get Gotham without Batman.
Yeah, it's a Batman show without Batman, and the way they've been setting it up, and that they've been introducing all the villains, it's like no wonder Batman can beat all these guys up. They're in their late 50s by the time
they're all old.
Out there. He's kicking the shit out of some geriatric motherfuckers.
Nice.
Holy shit! I could be Batman if I was 25 and all my villains were 60. I could be Batman.
Yeah, I haven't really gotten on the Gotham bandwagon either, so.
Yeah, I don't know that there is. I don't know that it's a bandwagon. I don't think there's anybody playing on there. Everybody I talk to, even those who watch it, are kind of like always trying to make excuses for it. Like, I never hear, like, if you ask me about The Flash, I'm going to tell you, I love that show. I think it's great.
The Flash is a comic book show.
Yeah.
With Gotham, it's like it has weird potential to be a very good crime show that if you showed me kind of Jim Gordon trying to clean up the Gotham Police Department, and he's partnered up with Harvey Bullock, and Harvey Bullock's character is very well-rounded and done well, and Oswald Cobblepot has is starting to establish himself as a crime boss, as the Penguin, and he's one of the best parts of it, and you're like, oh, here's some cool, interesting things. And even it was a little heavy-handed at first, but it's getting a little bit better, or I'm enjoying a little bit more some of the things that they're doing with Edward Nygma and him starting to become the psychopathic Riddler.
Right.
But then there's such other like heavy-handed, don't forget it's Batman stuff that they give you.
Right.
Like there's been like 6 different versions of like Catwoman on it. You know, there is actual Catwoman is in it as she's little Catwoman.
Right.
It's Selena Kyle.
She's girl, you know.
Yeah.
That girl.
Where it really just looks like they cloned Michelle Pfeiffer, and they have a 14-year-old Michelle Pfeiffer running around on this thing. But the rest of the stuff, there's so much other stuff. It's just like, don't forget it's Batman. Don't forget, you know. And it's like, and then they're getting into the weirdness of it too quickly. Like to me, the Batman story always was, all right, he started wearing the outfit, and then everybody kind of got a little crazier and started doing things like that. The way they're kind of doing this story is
it's crazy. He's going along with it.
It's crazy, like, and it's like Mad Max crazy at this point in the show. You got there's a mob henchman who now has like a club arm. They had cut off his hand, and now he has like a interchangeable arm with like they gave him like a mallet hand. And I'm like,
Oh my
All right,
god.
if this was something, if Batman was involved in this, I'd be a little bit more. But Batman is still a 14-year-old boy.
Yeah, that to me, that's the credibility gap that they have. That if they were going to do it,
I tell people all the time the show is half good. There's parts in it you're like, oh, that's really cool and that's interesting, and then there's other parts in it you're like, oh, this is fucking stupid.
that's what I hear. Everybody who watches it, that's what they say. Like, it's got potential,
Yeah.
but they never say that they actively love it and that they're, they can't, wait to see an episode. It's just, oh, it's got.
What
it's got
season
real
is
potential.
this?
This is season
3?
No, I think this is
3.
season 2.
Did it debut the same year as The Flash? Yeah, maybe it did. They came out together, I guess.
At some point you got to go like, okay, the show's got potential, but when does it stop having that potential? When does it start, realizing that
When
potential?
is it good? When is it good?
Yeah, I'd say you kind of like watch the whole show like, okay, become Batman. And he's not going to be Batman. And he's never going to be Batman because they're not going to put Batman on TV.
They're not putting Batman on TV. That's a waste of money, right? Like you put him in a movie, you're going to make millions. You put him in a TV show, it's not going to work.
Currently in its 2nd season.
Okay.
Okay.
I wonder if it'll be back for a 3rd. I wonder how the ratings are, if they're good enough to justify.
Yeah, I really don't know. I know people. I know it gets. There are people who really enjoy it, and I mean the portrayal, the stuff. If the show was just called Origin of the Penguin, it'd be you'd be like, okay, I get this. And I mean, it was so good. The guy is so good as the Penguin that people were coming up with these fan theories. They're like, he's not really the Penguin. He's really the Joker.
Right.
Because if a Batman villain's going to be cool, he has to be the Joker.
Yeah.
That's the cool Batman villain. It's the Joker, isn't it?
That's funny because when having read comics, I guess, for as long as I did, or as long as I have, the cool Batman villain, when I was a young guy reading them, was Two-Face. At least that was what I always walked away with. The Joker, if you look at Batman comics, like circa Batman 400 to Batman 500 or whatever. I'm talking the stuff that came out in the late 70s and early 80s, pre-Dark Knight. The cool Batman villain, or at least the Batman villain who was the one who always most put him to task, was Two-Face. And the Joker occupied kind of a similar sort of almost, I don't want to say gag, funny kind of spot, but not quite as bad as the Penguin, but kind of trending that way. Whereas Two-Face, there was nothing funny about this guy with this disfigured face, whereas the other guy who looked like a clown. Now, I guess the Steve Englehart and Marshall Rogers stories where, the fish or the Gotham fish thing or whatever, that was a good story with the Joker where it was really serious and deadly. But to me, when I was growing up, the cool Batman villain was always Two-Face. But then once Dark Knight happens, it becomes all about the Joker.
Well, I think what had happened was the Batman TV series killed the legitimacy of the Joker, the Riddler, the Penguin. You kind of all right, these are they became cartoon characters,
right?
And they weren't, the Joker and the Penguin got beat by Scooby-Doo.
Yeah,
you're
true story.
I
was there. I saw it happen.
I was there. I was a witness.
I have the DVD.
So I could definitely see why characters like Two-Face, and I think there was some of that's where some of the Ra's al Ghul stuff really came into vogue, and
Hugo Strange was a
yes,
guy who was a really a villain who kind of put Batman through his paces, and Batman rarely could have like the decisive, oh yeah, victory. I'm just throwing him back in Arkham Asylum.
One of the earliest Batman Joker stories I remember reading, I remember my buddy had the comic when we were kids, and I remember reading it, that the Joker had been caught. The Joker went on trial, was sentenced to death, was given the electric chair, faked getting the electric chair, like, survived the electric chair somehow.
Mm-hmm.
So he had served his sentence.
Wow.
So he was already in the clear, and then he had gone to some Middle Eastern country and has set himself up as a diplomat for that country. So
that's the one that ties into the Jason Todd death story.
Yes.
Because that's where that was the Jason Todd not A Lonely Place of Dying.
Death in the Family?
Those I think are the issues leading up to it. It's Jim Aparo is the artist. I remember I remember that corny scene where he comes out with like
a turban on. Yes.
It's the Joker, and he comes out with like a turban-like crown.
Yes.
It looks
but he's still in the Joker suit, and he's still
got the purple suit on, and Jim Aparo drew a very stylized Joker that was, sort of reminiscent of how they drew him in the 70s. So the chin was kind of like really like sort of elongated.
Yes.
And it just didn't sell. Now obviously ultimately that's the one wherein he beats Robin to death with a crowbar, or half to death, and then explodes the building.
Mm-hmm.
But for me, I guess he became more menacing, but that was still the holdover from Wacky Joker. Joker was crazy clown with the distorted features and the chalk white skin. And then I think that was the beginning of the transition to him of, no, he's Batman's ultimate nemesis. Even up until the Batman issue that came out 2 weeks ago, where I don't know if you guys are current on Batman, the Scott Snyder one, but, they just had a big Joker story Endgame, and, it was like, he and Batman had died, but now they're both actually back, and, well, who knows what's going on with DC. They're getting ready to reboot
they're rebooting again, from what I hear.
Yeah,
everybody kind of got sick and threw up at this past reboot. Nobody was happy with that, right? I mean, I haven't picked up a DC. I haven't picked up really almost any book in forever.
Since when you say reboot, which are you talking about? New 52?
New 52.
Or do you know which one you're talking about?
I'm not even sure if I know which one. The one where Superman is walking around in a pair of jeans.
Yeah, so that's New 52, and inside of there were some real big hits, and then some real, I think, creative misses. And yes, the Superman, kind of trying to take him back to, the genes and, the Grant Morrison idea that he's somehow or other a progressive hero of the people that he was when he originally came out in the 30s or something.
Right.
I don't think anyone ever, he was doing Action Comics, and it had the beginnings of a following, but then like any other Grant Morrison story, it didn't really reach a satisfying conclusion, and some of the ideas were not fleshed out as well or clearly told. But then something like Aquaman that came out of that reboot was amazing. Jeff Johns wrote it, Ivan Reyes drew it, and it was just an awesome story. And I was a big fan of that. So, but yeah, now they did the Convergence line, which sort of was a soft kind of reboot to it, and now I guess they're just gonna flush the whole thing again and start over.
They got to fix it. They got a movie coming out and
right. Yeah. They gotta get. Well, that was the rumor too, was that it's gonna move the whole line closer to movie continuity. which I don't know.
I mean, that's kind of what Marvel's done.
Yeah, for sure. Definitely. Can't blame them. They're not the dog. They're the tail.
Yeah. So if going back a little bit to the whole, talking about Deadpool and talking about the R-rated movie, superhero movie, do you guys have, like, in your opinion, something that you'd like to see done? Like, we're never gonna get like an R-rated Batman. Do you guys have something in your opinion that's something that you'd like to see?
I'd like to see a good R-rated Punisher movie. I mean, that's but that's a character we're getting on Daredevil. So we're not going to see that.
I think it's probably going to be one of the deepest Punishers that we get.
Oh, absolutely. And I'm excited to see Bernthal playing him as well.
Yeah,
because I liked him on The Walking Dead.
Huh.
But I don't know if any, I'm kind of apprehensive about a rated R Wolverine movie.
Yeah, that seems, and I don't think, I know there's some mixed opinions of it, and certainly Wolverine Origins has its problems, especially vis-a-vis what they did with Deadpool, but I don't think they need to change the tone of what they are doing with the Wolverine movies.
No, I don't think they do either. And just a quick throwback to talking about the actual Deadpool movie, I liked that little, nod to the horrible, Wolverine Origins Deadpool, where he had the stupid figure in his hand at some point. I don't remember what the conversation he was having was, but it kind of focuses, the camera focuses on this awful Deadpool figure.
I'm trying to answer Mike's question though, and I'm scanning my bookcase and kind of going, what character, really in Marvel needs that treatment? And I don't know that there is something in Marvel that really is screaming for R-rated treatment beyond the Punisher.
Yeah, I think if any, you'd have to get into some of the more minor characters. So like what I said, Howard the Duck. They tried to do a more, they tried to do a horror themed man thing. I think if DC did a R-rated Swamp Thing.
Yeah.
Those are well, yeah. You know what? If DC tried to adapt what Alan Moore did in Swamp Thing, then I think maybe that treatment could work.
I'd like to see that done as like a series, like an HBO series, like a cable television series.
Wow, now that's a good idea. Yeah, take the Alan Moore run and do that as like a 13-issue or 13-episode cable series.
You take your time with it. I've been thinking about this topic a little bit, and I was thinking about, a lot of the minor Marvel character, like remember like Master of Kung Fu?
Chi?
Yeah.
But there's nothing. So, to me, to go with the R rating, you really need something that's boundary pushing. And if you read Master of Kung Fu, there's not so much there that needs that.
I just think it would be violence,
And I think that's going to be a little bit of an issue we might see going forward with this movie being so big. With the R rating, is they're going to start
draft extra violence.
They're going to start reaching for stuff. Okay, we need to, for it to be a big hit, we need to give it that R rating, which is going back to the Wolverine 3. I don't think it needs to be. I don't think it needs to have an R rating.
Yeah, Lobo's a great choice you brought up.
Yeah,
that's perfect. I think that Punisher is a good idea for Marvel. I can't think.
There's probably some other more independent things, stuff like The Goon or the Max, the Boys. Yeah. Like I love that stupid Max
the
cartoon that used to be on MTV.
Yeah.
Yeah.
That's part of Liquid Television. You have things like that would be, and that was really that was that point. Like the Max and Pitt were just like two different versions of the Hulk.
Right. Exactly. Yeah.
You know, like everybody that left doing the Hulk went and did their own version of Hulk. It was like Eric Larson, Dale Keown, and
Sam Keith.
They all left the Hulk. They all went to Image, and they're like, all right, I got Hulk with a fin on his head. I got purple furry Hulk, and you get gray, long hair, Conan-looking Hulk.
Well, see, all right, so I'm gonna defend. I don't think the best artist of the group, in my humble opinion, made the one that is the biggest ripoff, which is Dale Keown was the best artist of that group, and to me, the Pit is the one with the least kind of going for it story-wise and differentiated.
I have zero memory of anything about the Pit. I remember the Max being definitely more psychological.
Yeah, the
Max. And it reminded me of some of those good psychological Hulk stories.
Yeah.
That kind of got into the deep aspects of it, and that's why that thinking about seeing that as a feature film would be like, oh, these are the Hulk movies you're never gonna get.
Well, here's the thing: you want to talk about a movie that could totally be an awesome R-rated property would be The Savage Dragon.
Yes.
I am a unabashed lover of The Savage Dragon because if you like, it's like Mean Streets with a guy who's a I mean, it literally is like a gang war crime drama where you got one guy on the cops who's like a superhero figure, and you got a bunch of guys on the villains who are all superpowered, amped up. But I mean, within the first 12 issues of that comic, the Savage Dragon has pretty much killed multiple supervillains, maimed a bunch of others, got caught in, been in bed with at least 2 different female characters in fairly gratuitous sex scenes. So, I mean, that actually, and given my fandom of the character, that actually is now at the top of my list because I'm not a huge Lobo fan. I like the Punisher. They're going to get him. They're going to do their treatment of him. I actually just moved the Savage Dragon to the top of I want an R-rated Savage Dragon movie.
I'd be down for that.
Yeah.
And the other thing I was thinking about today, in that like how they're going to copy this, and like how can we repeat this, and how can we make even more money with it by it not being an R-rated movie, by it being a PG-13 movie. And what character can do the same things. And I would like to see a big strain Tick treatment.
Yeah.
Because the Tick has had that self-aware...
fourth wall breaking.
Yeah, and not even necessarily fourth wall breaking as much as really aware of everything kind of in comics. Like it told a story while goofing on itself and everything around it. Because the Tick really started as a lot like Lobo, as a Wolverine spoof.
Yeah.
And it just kind of went from there, and it became, the fact that those first couple issues of the Tick where he's just thrashing through all the ninjas.
Yeah.
And when he destroys ninja headquarters, and then all the ninjas have to get like regular jobs. So as he's walking through the city, like ninjas work in the pizza place because they don't have jobs as ninjas anymore, but they still wear the ninja outfits.
Yeah, right.
And I'm just thinking, like 80s comics, the amount of ninjas that were around.
Everywhere. Frank Miller basically blew that so wide open. The hand. Oh man.
Well, if any subgenre, if any specialization of the martial arts had a decade, it was ninjas in the 80s.
Yeah. Yeah.
What was the guy who was in the movie? Sho Kazuki. Do you remember that? Remember that actor who was in the Ninja series?
Oh,
Ninja?
Yes.
And then I think there might have been maybe 3. Was one of
I
them?
own the Ninja 3 on Blu-ray. I had won it someplace in like a door prize type of thing.
Wow. That's
So I actually have the Ninja 3, and I also was thinking of there was American Ninja. Was that Jeff Speakman, or that was one of those?
That's Michael Dudikoff, isn't it?
Michael Dudikoff was Jeff. Jeff Speakman was the perfect weapon. Michael Dudikoff
Perfect
was
weapon. Oh my
And
God.
there were like 27 American Ninja movies.
Oh, they kept cranking them out. They were.
I think there's one due out next week, actually.
Direct to Blu-ray. Now, in scanning the bookcase, and speaking of characters who are slightly self-aware and also came about in that spoofy manner, Cerebus. How about a Cerebus movie?
Yes.
Now, would need to probably be done as a, it's like sort of animated, or maybe even like in a Roger Rabbit kind of a way, where he's the only CGI.
He's the only CGI. He's the only animated.
He's the only animated / CGI character who's living in a world where everybody else kind of just goes with the fact that, yeah, this little guy running around here is an aardvark, but we're not going to talk about it. It's just, it's there. But
I like that idea.
oh, man, just beautiful, beautiful artwork in that thing. Man, black and white comic. Now, admittedly, after 100, it's borderline unreadable.
I've heard that.
Yeah, I mean, but I don't know if you guys are familiar with the work at all, but if you get an opportunity, they have these big, like staring at my bookcase. I have a bunch of the individual floppies, but they also collected them in these big phone book style editions that would collect like 25 issues in one binding, and like on real thin newsprint, and you can pick them up now, like sometimes in the comic book stores, they'll be in like discount bins or whatever, and you'll get one for like $5, and it's 25 issues of the comic, and it's, especially if you can get the second one, it's called High Society. Funny as all hell. Great artwork, great stories. I mean,
I read some of that. I remember reading some of that stuff, high school or college, or where, at some point, I read it, and I was like, I want to get more of this. And it was one of those things. It's so funny you brought it up, because it's one of those things I've always wanted to get into, but kind of always forget about.
Yeah. Well, it went on so long. I mean, it ended up being 300 issues. He ended it at issue 300.
Okay.
And as time went on, and it's funny because speaking of time and the way that a work develops, the first 5 issues are straight parody of Conan the Barbarian circa Barry Windsor Smith and Roy Thomas in the 70s. Like, even to the point of, like there's even like similar story beats to some of them. I mean, it's just hey, we're going to make fun of this by everything's the same except there's an aardvark in the lead role. But then relatively quickly, within that first 25 issues, it starts to really develop into something very, very different. And the character has awareness of some of the ridiculousness of the situations that he's in. That's where the Deadpool thing comes in a little bit, but also becomes like a very much beyond yes, not just straight simple parody, but a little bit more kind of I'm not going to use the right term, but like the parodying of other conventions in comics becomes less thinly veiled, more interesting and more nuanced. And then by the time you get to those middle issues from 25 to 50, and in those issues he becomes like a political figure in one of the provinces, right, of the land. You know, sort of playing on the idea that Conan ascends to the throne at one point. So now he's got to become like an administrator of this thing, and he's constantly stymied because he wants to just like rip the head off of these people or whatever, but he can't because there's all these political ramifications. It's really hard for me even to describe adequately what it is, but I would say if you have any interest whatsoever, go back and pick up High Society. That's the name of the phone book edition that covers 25 to 50. You're not going to be disappointed, and it's beautiful. There's a period of time where that was part of the black and white explosion, you know, where like you think about like Mage. Certainly, everybody, you know, around here we all know Mage, you know, and some of the other comics that came out of it, like Mark Schultz, Xenozoic Tales. You know, I don't know if you guys know that work at all, but so there he uses so much texture and stuff because there's no color, so it's all in black and white, and just the artwork. If nothing else, if you don't even like the story, you'll come away with it going, man. For a while there, those guys were on top of the world drawing wise, and then as soon as you get past like 100 to like maybe even the 120s, it falls off a cliff. He got divorced from the girl who was kind of helping him run for the woman who was helping him run the company at the same time, and then it gets really bad, really a little bit misogynistic, and just hard to read. Long essays instead of comics. But the first 100 issues, good stuff.
Cool.
So, and it would be awesome given all the cursing and the drinking and carousing and sex that Cerebus manages to have as an aardvark. Would be a really good really good R-rated treatment in a Who Framed Roger Rabbit scenario. I think that'd be cool.
Well, I think this is what we have to look forward to, because we all know that if something's successful in Hollywood,
oh yeah,
we're going to do it over and over and over again until we're sick of it, and then they'll blame the product and the creator and the fans, and not the
fact that they've made a shit movie.
Right. Who's the first character that they're gonna shoehorn, or who's the first character where into his normal movies they're gonna shoehorn a breaking of the fourth wall where he turns to the camera and acknowledges that the audience is there? Like, who's the first character where they're gonna go and make that, even though that's not part of what they do, and suddenly have that be, because they're gonna go, oh well, this works, so let's do this.
And that's kind of that's going to be the problem, is that they're looking at all the wrong stuff as to why this movie worked.
Yep.
Yeah, I don't know who.
I don't know who it would be, but you know it's coming. Somewhere along the line. It might even be as soon as Suicide Squad. Who knows? I guess it's probably done filming now, but I don't know.
Yeah, I don't know. We'll be disappointed when it gets when
it does happen.
It's gonna be something like Aquaman. It's really gonna be.
Oh God, no, please.
Actually, you know what I want to have happen? I want the Aquaman movie to be like really cool, and he does like really cool shit, like send a tidal wave of sharks at somebody, and then turn to the camera and be like, "Who sucks now, motherfucker?" And then just goes back to what he was doing.
Suck on that, Sharknado!
Yeah.
You know what? I would accept that. I would absolutely accept that.
Oh man, that's so not the Aquaman that I.
Yeah, exactly. That's and that's what you'll have.
Damn it. Oh well.
All right, I'm ready to pack it in after we've ruined Aquaman.
You've now ruined
we made Aquaman cool and ruined him in 2 seconds.
So, you got anywhere you're going to be, Jay?
I do, actually. I'm glad you asked, and I know that the past couple times I have been woefully short in terms of upcoming appearances, but I have my calendar kind of readily available. March, no, I don't exactly have it available, but March 5th, Big Apple Con in New York City. I'm going to be there with the folks from Outpouring Comics. That's a show. It starts at I think it starts at 10. Doors open at 10. Goes to 5. Also later on in March 19th and 20th, I'm going out to Chicago for C2E2.
Nice.
I'll be there again with the guys from Outpouring. That should be a real big deal. It's a nice show by all reports. I've never been there myself, but it's kind of the Midwest's answer to San Diego and New York. And then for those who are local, on the 23rd of March, which is a Wednesday, and is 2 days before, or I should say a day before, the release of Dawn of Justice, much like we did with Deadpool, I'll be doing a store signing, sort of sketches and stuff like that in celebration of the movie at Heroes in Burlington, New Jersey. So,
cool.
Yeah.
Cool. Plate's starting to get a little full, man.
Yeah, we're getting into the busy season. I was looking at it the other day, and my wife, and there's probably 12 or something weekends in the next 16 where I'm going to be somewhere somehow drawing for somebody. So come see us, get your sketch from me, buy the books, all that jazz.
Cool. All right.
Very nice.
Very nice. So you know where to find us. We're on iTunes and Stitcher. Check us out at the channelzpodcasts.wordpress.com, facebook.com/channelzpodcasts. Want to shoot us an email? It's channelzpodcasts@gmail.com. I think we got a new hot tag coming for you this week as well. So I'm Chris.
I'm Mike.
I'm Jay.
Jay's been Jay.
Jay's been Jay. And we will see you next week.